Sorry about that, guys. Little snafu on my end. So, as I was saying, the chief reader was very adamant about writing within the context of the rhetorical situation. So, understand the rhetorical situation and make sure that whenever you make commentary or trying to explain evidence, tying it back to the speaker, the audience, their purpose at this time in history, right? So, here we go. When you read a text, whether it's an assigned reading or an article that interests you, remember that it was created by a real person writing for a real audience with a real purpose at a specific time. In other words, think about the rhetorical situation. For example, a senior class president who delivers a commencement speech at graduation would primarily be addressing fellow classmates. The writer, sometimes referred to as speaker, may want this audience to reflect on shared experiences, or he or she may want to inspire classmates and give them advice about the future. This person was prompted, inspired, or even provoked by internal or external circumstances to write a speech. We call these elements and circumstances the context. Along with the writer's personal background, this context shapes the motivation for creating the text, which is called the exigence. For example, a student may write a letter to school administrators asking them to provide more parking spaces for students. He became frustrated when, day after day, he had to park blocks away from the school. This motivation, or exigence, will influence the writer's message, his or her perspectives on and ideas. In turn, the message will be influenced by the writer's general purpose, whether that is to inform, persuade, or evaluate. The writer achieves this purpose by creating a text such as a speech, an email, a video, or an essay. All of these components are interconnected. Change the audience, for instance, and the writer will likely need to adjust the message. Together, these components comprise the rhetorical situation. Okay, so that last paragraph, what it's saying is that this speaker to this audience at this time for this purpose is extremely important. You change one of those, instead of having a student writing to administration, and if instead you change to a parent writing to administration, they will write a distinctly different letter than that student would because you've changed the speaker, even if everything else is the same. If the speaker is still a student, but he's writing to his fellow classmates to rally support, that's going to be a different message than when he's writing to the administrator or that audience. So when you change the speaker or change the audience, everything else changes. Okay, so this is just a chart to help you out, right? The writer, message, the purpose. The definition for each of these is in the left-hand column, okay? Key questions to consider is in the right-hand column here. So when you go to analyze something, think about the writer, you could ask yourself, who is the writer and what is their relationship to the subject, okay? What values and beliefs does the writer hold about the subject? What is the writer's relationship to the situation or to the audience? Okay, we've done some of this already, but here's in writing some questions to help you figure out how to answer these or find answers to these key components, right? The writer, message, the purpose. So you'd use these key questions to help you analyze. These questions are meant to help you dig in deep and find information that you're looking for. This is just the end of that chart. I just couldn't fit it all on one page. We have your exigence, context, and audience. So it has all the same things I had on my space cat worksheet, or the space portion of the space cat. It's simply in a different order, okay? So we've kind of discussed this, but here's just a different visual that this book uses. In his book, The Art of Rhetoric, Greek philosopher Aristotle first expressed how these rhetorical components are interrelated. He created the Aristotelian triangle to illustrate these relationships. So we have our writer, audience, and message. Here's their purpose. Here's context and exigence, right? So the writer lives in this context. The audience lives in this context, okay? The writer, something happens. That's this exigence over here on the right-hand side. I'm sorry, left side, the light bulb, right? Something happens which influences the writer, and now the writer wants to write. The writer has a specific message, right? But the writer also has to keep in mind that despite this message they want to share, they have to share it with this specific audience. So how's this audience going to relate to this message? And they have to all work together to achieve his purpose that he wants, right? And all that, again, lives within that context. So it's just kind of a visual for you. So the writer and audience are in the situation where they are connected through a common subject. The situation creates motivation for the writer to convey a unifying idea through a text and engage the audience. Writers usually know who their audience is before they write a text, their backgrounds, beliefs, and values. This relationship between the writer and the audience affects the rhetorical choices they make when developing an argument. Again, we said this before. how I speak to my kids versus my peers versus students versus my boss, right? Even though if I'm saying the same thing to all of them, I change how I speak and how I convey that message. And so I use different choices for each one in order to get my point across, right? So you're going to be you would be practicing this. We're not going to do it. Normally we'd be doing this as a whole class as a partner activity, but I'm just going to explain it now. You think of a situation where you're trying to convince or persuade someone. Describe your message. Consider your subject, perspective, and unifying idea. Okay. So in a class, I'd give everyone the same subject, right? The subject is School Spirit Week, right? That's the subject, School Spirit Week. Perspective is like, do you like it, dislike it? Should we have more of it, fewer of them? Should we change which days we're doing? Should we always keep it the same? You have a certain perspective, right? You need to have a unifying idea. So what's the larger idea? This could be the idea of tradition, the idea of school spirit, the idea of creating unity within the group, within the school, right? Unity, spirit, tradition, these are all abstract ideas. Okay, you can't touch any of those things. And then you want to get to the right message. What are they trying to say about those things? And that's how you put all those things together to create a message. What's their point? What's their claim? Okay. So you're going to practice using a Queen Elizabeth speech. Okay. This is during, so they don't have her death date here because she just died recently, earlier this year, last semester. So it was the beginning of 2023. She passed away. End of 2022. She passed away. So it says here, Queen Elizabeth, born in 1926. Again, think how many things she's lived through. Even if you don't know anything about Queen Elizabeth, think of when she was born, what historical events she's lived through, all the different inventions and things she's seen, what's her role within her government, what she has power to do or not to do, her perspective on things, right? She had served as monarch of the United Kingdom and 15 other commonwealths since 1952. She was the longest reigning. She reigned for 70 years. She is the longest reigning British monarch. As the longest reigning monarch of Great Britain, she has led through public and private turmoil, including World War II, the Cold War, and the death of Princess Diana. Think of why the authors of this book have chosen to list Princess Diana there. When you have two wars, and then you have Princess Diana. Why is that important, right? In April 2020, shortly after the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, England's Queen Elizabeth II delivered a televised address to the nation. Other than her annual message each Christmas Day, this speech is only the 5th televised address she has delivered since being crowned Queen of England in 1952. So think about that information, right? The background information provided to you in these prompts are always important because they're giving you additional rhetorical situation information, right? So every year she gives a Christmas message that's televised. In 70 years, this is only the 5th time in 70 years. That's like one every 12 years or something like that, right? Or even one every 15 years or something, okay? That she has decided she needs to give another speech. So this is very important, obviously, if she's going to give a televised speech. Okay, think about that. So what you're going to do, okay? You're going to read, you have the speech in front of you in a packet. You're going to read the speech, or you can play this little video. You can open up the slideshow and you play this little video or search for it and listen to her speech, but follow along on your reading, right? As you read, use this graphic organizer on the right-hand side to identify and describe the components of the rhetorical situation. You'll be asked to consider how the components influence the writer's message. So how does the exigence influence her message, right? How does who she's speaking to influence her message? Okay. Think about how does who she is has influenced her message, right? Some of this information you may know. Some of this information was provided on the previous slide in that background information. How's that background information? What can you fill in here from, okay? And then all of this information you also might find in the actual speech itself. So please use all of your resources to fill in as much as possible. Once you've listened to the speech, you'll then, and you fill out the worksheet, you then need to answer these 5 questions, okay? Please answer these 5 questions in Google Classroom, and number them 1 through 5, and then write your answers. You may use your graphic organizer to help you answer these questions. We will address them tomorrow in class. If you have any questions, please email me.